Yeah, so he came and stayed here for a few days, and we got to connect on a deeper level. And so not only is he sharing amazing information, coming out with some really groundbreaking awareness, really bridging the worlds, I feel, of science and consciousness. And but I also got to spend time with him, really get to know him, and he's just a beautiful soul that's really passionate and sincere about the work he does. So let me go ahead and read the official bio here and tell you a little bit about who he is and what he's created. So Isaac Mars, as an author, spiritual guide, theoretical physicist on the team of scientists at the Alliance for ET Diplomatic Contact. Isaac Mars is shattering old paradigms with his new book, Unity Theory. By achieving global disclosure on the science of spirituality, Isaac believes that we can come together to create a world where science is limited only by our imagination. Suffering fades away into distant memory, and every person from every nation, color, class, creed, and any other division can finally unite under the unifying nature of consciousness. So Isaac, thank you for being here, brother. I love you. I'm glad you're here, part of this event. How you doing?
I've been fantastic, Neil. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to know all of you and to be with all of you. And thank you so much, Suzanne, for that powerful activation. I really appreciate that. And yeah, so without further ado, it's a very exciting time right now, and I'm excited to be here. And Portal to Ascension and Soul Search are extremely powerful, and I just want to honor them as the organizations that are beginning to pull all of us back together, and to just see how that vibration is reflected throughout all of our reality. For example, how Nicole and Krista will be leading the 11/11 retreat next month. It's all about bringing the soul family together, and I feel like we're just coming out of the prologue. It's like everybody's stories have just only begun. So now that we're bringing the family back together, we're going to start to see some very powerful co-creations, some very powerful manifestations of all the infinite energies that are collapsing into the particle reality that we're experiencing. And so, as Neil said, I am a theoretical physicist. So that's my number one specialty and gift in this embodiment that I can share with all of you. And so at the beginning of 2021, last year, I had my awakening. And for most of my life, I was stuck in the illusion of separation. I was in the matrix. And it took me deciding to follow my heart to finally get to the point where I had this sort of divine intervention awakening, where originally I was writing a science fiction novel, and I had spent 3 years crafting all the characters and the storylines and the backstories. And I decided I was going to set this story in the near linear future. And I realized I wanted to explain time to my readers so that I could explain how time travel worked in my story. Well, in order to make everything as hyper-realistic as possible, I ended up researching Einstein's theory of relativity. And that led to me creating what I call the infinity mirror experiment. So the infinity mirror experiment is a very profound thought experiment, not because just what it explains to us, but because in this thought experiment, using sound logic, sound rational scientific logic, we can not only come to the conclusion of this infinity, of this infinite dimensionality of existence. Not only can we come to that conclusion, but we can also realize that this is proven through the logic, that it is essentially inarguable. And so as I explain things, I just want to be clear that I respect each and everybody's free will. So take what resonates and disregard what doesn't. I'm not here to convince anybody. But as I said, I have not been able to find a single scientist or intellectual that has been able to disprove the logic that this infinity mirror experiment provides. And so how the infinity mirror experiment works is essentially I imagine myself as the present moment, which makes sense because I'm always in the present moment. It's always now. And according to mainstream science, which is how I came up with this thought experiment. All of time is happening at once. And as Einstein said, time is a stubbornly persistent illusion. The past and the future don't exist. There's only now. So I thought if all of time happens at once in this experiment, I am the present moment. I'm in flow. It makes sense. And then I imagined a mirror in front of me. And that mirror was representative of the past. And so I thought, okay, if all of time is happening at once, then the past is happening along with the future. Excuse me as I cancel these notifications. So the past and the future are both simultaneously happening along with the present moment. And we often say that we live on a timeline. And so a line is a symmetrical thing. So if the past is happening now and it's represented by that mirror, and we often say we reflect on our past, the present is also happening, and then the future is happening as well right now, because all of time it happens at once, then the future would be another mirror behind the observer. So we'd have the past, the present, and the future. And I realized in this thought experiment that this makes sense logically speaking, because we can't see the future right now. And so that center moment, when you put two mirrors back to back, parallel next to each other, they reflect that present moment infinitely, both into the past and into the future. Meaning on a single timeline, all of the infinite moments that could possibly exist leading up to this one I'm currently experiencing in my linear past, all are still happening right now. I'm simply shifting my awareness through these infinite, we could call them reality frames, that all simultaneously exist. And so when we realize that, this is extremely important and liberating for human consciousness, because we realize from that perspective, from a single timeline, there is no free will. But then when we take things to another level and we look at the Mandela effect, which is something that millions and maybe even up to 1 billion or more individuals on this planet have experienced and corroborated, in which Nelson Mandela died in our childhood memories in the 1980s in prison. But in this current moment right now, all of our history in our news and everything that we can find, our media shows us that Nelson Mandela actually lived until 2013 in this reality, in this timeline. And so that kind of gives the show away, because if time isn't one timeline, then that means that there must be more than one. And so that's how we have our free will. And so with this infinity mirror experiment, I took it to another level. I said, if we have the past and the future, and that makes one timeline, well, in order to have more than one, to account for more than one possibility, more than one choice, that we would have to create multiple other timelines too. But that wouldn't be symmetrical unless all of the timelines encompassed that center point, that center present moment, which would create an infinity mirror sphere. And so this sphere is perfect. A sphere is a perfect representation of symmetrical geometric unity, because in a sphere, from that center point, there are an infinite number of points to explore. Or if we're using this timeline concept, there are an infinite number, because you can just keep zooming in to create bigger decimal points. There's an infinite number of timelines, which means that the only way, logically speaking, that linear time could unfold in this story that we're experiencing the way that it is right now, the only logical possible way is if there are infinite timelines. Because if there weren't infinite timelines, then we wouldn't have free will, and we would have a system that isn't perfect, that isn't symmetrical. But since there are infinite timelines, then we have a perfect system. It is symmetrical, and time can flow the way that it does, along with us being able to keep our free will from a certain perspective. And so that's the important thing about unity theory, is it proves that essentially reality itself is a dream. And so if reality itself is just as real as any other dream that we have when we put our head down to sleep at night, then that means there's fundamentally nothing to be afraid of. And if there's nothing to be afraid of, then we see the bigger picture. Because if there are infinite realities that create the ability to experience this one right now, then that means, since everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, that you have two choices. Do you want to downdraft? Do you want to go closer to low vibration, closer to what we typically call hell, or, the dark night of the soul, or suffering? That's your choice. If you want to align your vibration, since you are a walking vibration, to that, that's your choice. You are free to do that. And that's what we've been doing for thousands of years unconsciously. We've been unconsciously making these decisions that lead to division, that lead to this illusion of separation, which is the only source of lack, limitation, and suffering, and anything else that is negative in this reality. When we realize the truth of unity, the direct opposite, the antithesis to the illusion of separation, that truth of unity liberates us, because more and more we're realizing that everything outside of us is entangled with us. It is inseparable from us. It all exists within our mind. So since everything exists within our mind, that means we are inseparable from the universe. We are one with it. And everybody else is one with it as well. And so that is where I take unity theory to the next level. This is the science of consciousness. This is the science of ascension. Why? Because everything becomes clear. It becomes simple. There's no more confusion. So when I know that everything is me and I can live that and embody that, what would that look like? Well, if I'm in a relationship with somebody and they are getting frustrated with me, or they say something that the old me, the old programming would have chosen unconsciously or otherwise to be upset about, this new version of me looks at that other person in the relationship and says, that is me. Am I going to accept me, or am I going to judge myself? And when I accept that version of me, knowing that truly we are all one, there's one being here experiencing an infinite number of lives, then we start to act in high vibration. We start to act in unconditional love, and we naturally align ourselves to that light, that frequency, that information. And it becomes our true nature, because in truth, from everything that I've learned regarding the science, regarding where we come from in the higher dimensions, the higher frequency octaves, we are unconditional love. That is the truth of our existence. The illusion of separation creates the illusion of fear. Fear is conditional love. It's still love, because everything is love. But fear is based on conditions. I will love you if such and such is in place, or whatever. And so once you realize that fear is conditional love and unconditional love is the true divine love, that can allow us to reach those high levels of frequency, then everything starts to align in place. Looking at reality from this perspective, what we could call holographic or holodynamic, we realize that every little bit of energy is just like us as a human being. Every little piece of energy in the universe experiences the universe within that little tiny piece of energy's mind or consciousness. And since that is the case, everything is, philosophically speaking, God. And since everything is God, there is nothing that somebody can manipulate someone else to do, for example, because at the end of the day, the person who is being manipulated is choosing to be manipulated. They might be doing it from an unconscious place, and those of us that understand these universal laws can have a lot of compassion for those individuals, but they're still choosing it nonetheless. And that's one of the biggest lessons that our ego can learn right now all across the world, is once the world realizes that all the dark things that we've been experiencing, we've actually been choosing because we've tricked ourselves, psychologically speaking, it's just going to create a huge shift. Everybody's going to see, well, if I can't argue against this logic, and this is how things work, then why not try it? Why not be a part of a grand experiment in which every person that stumbles across unity theory, that stumbles across this new science that will be going very mainstream very soon, ask yourself, do you want to be happy? Do you want to receive the greatest abundance, the best, most joyful experience that you could possibly have? Because if so, you can do that. It's very simple. And all the questions that we could ever have regarding any problem can be solved through these principles, through the 12 universal laws, the 7 hermetic principles, through my book, Unity Theory. We're starting to learn the truth. And so I don't want to keep talking too much about necessarily what I'm doing. What I would like to invite is, if anybody that is participating in this beautiful event, if anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to reflect on here with me in this now moment, I invite that, because I want to show you all that seriously, from this awareness, any problem can be solved, any negative cycle can be overcome and graduated. And when we do that, what we eventually embody is heart consciousness. That's the next level. It's making decisions from the heart, using our mind as an assistant. I've seen a lot of people out there, and I'm just going to keep talking. And if anybody has any questions regarding anything, please just feel free to enter it in the Q&A section. But as I was saying, in heart consciousness, we realize that since there are infinite realities, aligning to the frequency that is of the heart is the most beneficial for our experience. It's going to lead to the greatest evolution, the greatest growth. And so what the mind becomes is, it becomes an assistant rather than an enemy. I've seen in a lot of spirituality that people try to suppress the ego entirely, or kill the ego, or the ego is our enemy. And that's just more illusion of separation. The ego is what we're here for. The ego is my identity. I get to be Isaac Mars when I allow my ego to exist. And so the ego is a very powerful ally, but the problem with our current reality is that most people, the majority of the collective consciousness, our ego is programmed to be divisive. It's programmed for fear. And so once we reprogram our minds to be in alignment with unconditional love, which is what I did for months and months, I wrote on my hand, choose love, not fear. And so if something was negative, I would ask myself, where is this coming from? Why is this happening? And then I would realize I chose this. I chose this, and I chose fear. And this led to me having this negative experience. And every single time I did that, I became more aware. Every single time I stopped just briefly, a split second before I made a decision or reacted or responded to anything, I would think, am I choosing love or am I choosing fear? And then the way that I would proceed and approach that situation was with whatever was the positive, the loving option, even if it was uncomfortable for me, even if I still felt the fear. It's not like I'm fearless and I'm immune to it. It's that I chose to walk through it anyway. And when we do that, we accept more of ourselves. We open up to more aspects of us, and we become more of who we really are. When we realize that everyone is us, then we can tap into that unity and understand through concepts like in the book Holodynamics by Dr. Victor Vernon Wolf, one of my close friends and colleagues. In holodynamics, it's explained that everybody else in our reality lives within our consciousness, within our mind, as a hologram, essentially, a living hologram. And so the more people that we love, the more people that enter our consciousness in that single individual perspective and is integrated into their highest potential, their highest light, then that is more power that we are tapping into, because that's more of ourselves that we're accepting. And the more that we raise our vibration and accept ourselves and remember ourselves, who we really are, being everything, being God in this small fractalized form, the more that we expand our vibration, our consciousness, our experience, and our authority. Authority is the biggest one, because when you watch movies like The Matrix and you are watching Neo stand in front of all those Agent Smiths, they're all shooting bullets at him, and he, with his authority, stops the bullets in that famous scene called Bullet Time. That is the authority that I'm speaking on. That is what we are capable of, and very realistically so, because all of the TV shows, the movies, they are portals into these other dimensions, these other infinite realities. Neo is just as real as you and I are. And so that means if Neo is just as real as you and I are, then that means you are the one. You can stop bullets with your hand, but you can only do that once you fully remember who you are. When you're walking in your power, in your authority, and work through and transmute all of your fears. How do we transmute things? We experience that energy. And so the way that we can open up our vessel to having more light is by allowing those low vibrational emotions and energies to rise up and to accept them, not to push them away or run from them, but to accept them and love them and forgive ourselves for choosing those things, because that's what we did at the end of the day. We chose everything that we experience. And when we accept that, we take back our authority and very powerful things begin to unfold. And so I'm getting a question in right now from an anonymous person. How do you think a shift to a higher dimension on planet Earth would change our physical experience? That's a beautiful question. And I love that this was asked, because everything that we are experiencing right now is anchored into this timeline by prophecy. And prophecy is much more than what we have been led to believe. For example, I believe that TV shows and movies are prophecy. Once you start to watch many of them, and it's one of my favorite pastimes, so it's sort of the way that I can see what is going on in the collective, you can see that there are many, many patterns that are all interwoven throughout all of our movies and TV shows. And so a shift to a higher dimension on planet Earth, in my personal opinion, in my experience, what I've been shown from my full potential self or my higher self, is that we already exist in that dimension. We already have a body in that dimension. But that body, from what resonates with me, is this body. But it's this body in a nonlinear experience that exists in parallel to this one, which is confusing, but that's essentially how the universe works, is everything is the one. When I'm looking at another character, that character is still the same actor. It's still the same I am, the same universe that's playing that role. And so our higher selves, our full potential selves, already exist in fifth dimensional consciousness. And all it's going to take is for us to continue to choose unconditional love over fear every moment, first towards ourselves. That's very key. And then towards everyone and everything else. And the more that we do that, the more that we will refine our consciousness. This has been happening to me firsthand. The other night, it must have been a Kundalini experience or something, because I felt all this new energy flowing through me. And so once we get to the point, which is inevitable, it's statistically inevitable, the more that we align to these higher frequencies that lead into the upper octaves, we will begin to ascend. And the interesting thing, person who asked this question, is that in the prophecies, specifically, I believe it was the Mayan or the Hopi prophecy. I needed to double check, but I think it was the Mayan prophecy that talked about these end of days. It said that the 144,000, and I'm assuming other people that begin to ascend as well, the 144,000 ascend into the body of their dreams. So this current version of me, of Isaac, is an avatar that I chose to incarnate into so that I could have this certain experience and transmute the karma that I needed to transmute for the planet and for the collective consciousness so that we could all rise up. But this body is a body that I chose into for these certain lessons so that I would receive certain programs throughout my early childhood that I could transmute. But this version of me is only the tip of the iceberg. The real me is that fifth dimensional version, and it exists alongside this version in that higher frequency octave. And so when you think about our eyes can't see beyond a certain band of frequencies. So there's a lot more going on when you look at spectrometers and energy readers. You can see that there's clearly a lot more energetically going on than we can see with the human eye. And so as we begin to shift in that other dimension, we're going to get to the point where we're not going to be perceivable by the people in this reality, because like a TV show or not a TV show, let's do a radio. On a radio, you have that dial and you can change and scan the frequencies. And so as we shift out of this dimension, we're shifting into that other frequency. But the interesting thing that's been reflected back is that higher vibrational frequencies are always more powerful and more capable than lower vibrational frequencies, which is another point that I want to talk about after I finish this long answer to the question. But because higher vibrational frequency is more capable, for some reason, extraterrestrials, star family, they can perceive us in this lower frequency octave, but we can't perceive them. So as we shift into the fifth dimension, we will no longer be perceived in this reality. We will then be aligned, and this body will magnetically, perfectly, with infinite intelligence, aligned to the cells and the energy of our fifth dimensional body. And we'll go through that transmutation, that experience, that shape-shifting. I really feel that we are going to go through that experience. And when we do, we will remember so much about our divine nature, our divinity, and our abilities, and our memories from other parallel lives, that we will be able to anchor that into the fifth dimension in that moment of ascension and in that remembrance. And then, per prophecy, we are to come back and help the world. And so, as another frontliner on a lot of this information has said, Ishmael Perez, he and I agree that we are going to see things that we would constitute as superheroes. We're going to see people with abilities and teleportation, flying. So we're getting some more questions. So I only have a few more minutes, so I want to answer these last two questions. But as I was saying about frequency, one of the 12 universal laws is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. And this is the law that dictates our personal authority that I was describing earlier. So the higher you are in vibration, the more power and authority you have over anything that's of a lower vibration than you. For example, I was in Chicago, Illinois after my awakening, and my family swore that I was losing my mind because I was claiming to be furthering Einstein's work and solving these universal problems. And so I went to Chicago, Illinois on this walkabout experience, trying to figure out what was going on, why I was being shown all these secrets. And my family called the police on me there, and I ended up surrounded by SWAT and police with pistols drawn, AR-15s, the works, safeties off, yelling that they were going to open fire unless I complied. And I straight up said, "You're going to kill an innocent man then, because I will not comply if you're using violence." And one of the officers screamed at me through the window, and he said, "You better listen to me." And I said, "No, you listen to me." And every single officer simultaneously, like something out of a movie, lowered their weapons and took a step back as if they were physically knocked back. And that officer looked at me like, "Who the heck are you?" And that's when I realized in that moment that we are all that powerful. That's the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. That's why this is true, that high vibration is more powerful than low vibration. And I really want to hammer that home for everybody watching this, so you can see that reflected back to you. When you look at Emoto's water crystal experiments, you see that a low vibrational crystal of water, it's asymmetrical. It's floppy, it's all weird looking, and it's not good for something. If you were to try and use it for a building material, it wouldn't work. It would just fall and collapse on itself. But if you look at the love and the hope and the faith, those vibrations in the water crystals, you see the perfect geometric patterns that look like snowflakes. And if you build structures with those perfect geometric patterns, they'll be extremely powerful. And so that's just a simple way of saying that. And somebody asked, can I share the meaning of the symbol behind me? And so, yes. So as I awaken to the truth of my soul's mission here, I've been learning more and more about the symbol after it was already created. So I could make a whole 10-minute section of what this symbol means in all of its entirety and symbolism. But for me, it's very simple. It's bringing spirituality to the earthly realm. That's what I'm here to do. That's why I go by the moniker, the Crimson Eagle. because the crimson is the earth, the root chakra, the red. I know that not everybody's on the same page in regard to feminine and masculine energies, but to me, red represents actually the feminine energy and blue represents the masculine in my reality. And so that red energy is all about tapping into the feminine energy, which is the quantum. It's the infinite possibility. That's another important thing that I really need to hammer home before I end this, is that the left brain, the masculine, the story, the particle version of viewing reality, it's very limited. It's how we get lost in stories. It's how we lose ourselves in the matrix. Right brain is feminine. It's feeling, it's emotion, it's connected to the heart. And so the right brain has been suppressed for thousands of years, because if you do that, then you get people on a hamster wheel going around in circles in their dramas. And so what to break out of that is to realign our left brain and our right brain, which is so powerful that Suzanne did that activation earlier for that, and embody that fully through a connection between our mind and our heart. And so this symbol is a symbol of that. It's connecting the mind to the heart, doing that for everyone else. And I just want to see if I can get to this last question before I run out of time. Do you think if enough souls of the collective consciousness start to move towards higher dimension, a quantum leap for the rest of Earth would happen? Absolutely. And the reason why is because that's how vibration works. That's how this reality is created. Everything that we have experienced as a species, as mankind, we all chose. There isn't a single person that wasn't a part of these decisions. And did we all choose it consciously in this human perspective? Not necessarily. Most of the planning was done behind the scenes with our soul in the higher dimensions. But nonetheless, that's what we did. We chose this, and we chose to carry the vibrations we carry. But the more that we choose the illusion of separation, the more that we recreate the battle, war, murder reality. And the more that we align with love, the more that we create healing, the more that we create unity consciousness, and we tap into that feminine infinite potential. And what that looks like is walking into a coffee shop that you've never been to, but you suddenly get the intuitive, push to go. And then you walk in there and you end up talking to the person that is the missing puzzle piece for this big manifestation you've been working on for years. And that's when we start to just trust our intuition, our guidance, our body, our heart, and our excitement. And so, I've answered the three questions that I can see right now. And I know that I'm scheduled to be ending soon. So I just want to check in and see if anybody on the panel has any questions or what.
Thank you so much, Isaac. Not a question, but a couple comments on what you're sharing, and maybe you can elaborate on it a little bit to close out here. I really appreciate just the way you put things in perspective in regards to the fear, right? How fear is a part of love too. And it's interesting because if we all came from oneness and even duality and darkness and fear, everything came from that infinite singularity, that oneness, then therefore everything within the spectrum is a part of the one, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just a reframing of having to fight against something to transmuting it to go back to the light where it originally came. So that's what I kind of got from what you're sharing there.
Right. And to close with that, a lot of the programming that I've seen that stops us from reaching those higher potentials is the idea that we're messing up or making mistakes. But that's one of the things that's holding us back. If we just let go and we say, no, it's okay if I choose fear. It's okay if I get angry and lash out and get low vibe, because then we're accepting those parts of us. But then when we accept those parts, that's when we can use our higher awareness to feel through that emotion, open up our vessel to more of the lighter energies, and then we are no longer bogged down or limited. And so, again, I just want to thank everybody for being a part of this. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Portal to Ascension. Thank you, Tangela, Nicole, and Soul Search. Thank you, everybody, for watching this. Thank you for being you. Thank you for following your heart and remembering who you are and stepping more into your power and your authority. And if you want to learn more about the science and the first theory to publicly solve gravity, dark matter, and dark energy, check out my book, Unity Theory. You can get it for free or for love donation off my website. Or if you want to contact me directly, you can get a physical copy. And I'm also on YouTube as The Crimson Eagle. Instagram, The Crimson Eagle, and Facebook as Isaac Mars. I'd love to connect with anybody willing to enter unity consciousness, co-create together, and build New Earth. So thank you all for being here, and much love.
Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. This is Neil, founder of Portal to Ascension, and just closing out this podcast here and letting you know that what you're experiencing are all types of presentations that we have on Portal to Ascension. Such a wide variety, different audio clips from conferences that we do, and then other interviews that we have also on our YouTube. And I want to take this moment here at the end and just talk to you about a few upcoming things with Portal to Ascension. We're really excited because 2023, we're really blasting off, and we have a few conferences. We have Portal to Ascension San Diego, April 21st, 22nd, and 23rd. We have Portal to Ascension Glastonbury in the UK. Hope to see some of you there. That's August 11th, 12th, and 13th of next year. And then, or 2023 if you're listening to it now. And then we're also taking a tour of people to Egypt, guys. And we're going to go from September 7th. We're going to have the Hertax with us, JJ and Desiree Hertax, like you might have experienced on that channel. Joan of Angels is going to be with us, and also Alan Steinfeld. And actually, I have Joan of Angels here with me right now, so I'm going to just hand it over to her and get your input, Joan, on what we're going to be experiencing, your excitement, and all of that.
So this is a critical time in our history on the planet, and 2023 is this reawakening of it's just our reawakening of our spirituality and our transformation along this ascension timeline. So these events are designed to really awaken you, to really bring you to remember who you are, why you're here, your galactic origins, the power, the personal power we have within us to shift into the planet that we really want at the most optimum of potential, to align our body, mind, and spirit to get there. So these, just to be together in person, activates forgotten memories, activates light codes, activates DNA, and most of all, activates your happiness cells, because the joy in coming together is just extraordinary. So we invite you to come and be with us in any of these events around the world. And even online, we try to create that same energetics. So we love you all, that we are creating a mystery school that goes around the planet and off planet.
Exactly, yes. And just a few websites for you. So firstly, of course, the main website, portaltoascension.org. We'll have everything there. You can sign up and get 1,000 plus, well, it's over 3,000 at this point, hours of free conscious content, you know, like a streaming platform where you can browse and all of that. And then ascensionconference.com for Portal to Ascension San Diego, ascensionglastonbury.com for the Glastonbury conference, and then the Egypt tour is going to be on Portal to Ascension, or is on portaltoascension.org as well. Yeah, so some beautiful, amazing experiences. We're really blasting off. It's time to get exponential. You know, we've been exponential, but now the exponential curve is even going even higher, because it's really time for us to remember who we are, tap in our true potential, and make some change on Earth that's better creates betterment for everybody, right? And that's why we're doing what we do. That's why this podcast exists. So excited to see you guys there. AscensionConference.com and Portal to Ascension. Joan, any closing words?
Ascension Glastonbury. Yeah, we're all taking off together. This is the time for which we've been called, loves. Can't wait to see you there.
Love you all.